Hi, it's April 5th, 2018. I'm Nancy Harrington, and I'm here with Anita Mann for the interviews, An Oral History of Television in Santa Monica, California.
What's your last name?
Harrington.
And rolling.
Okay, so we're just going to start with a little bit of background information first, so the
Okay.
easy stuff. What was your name at birth?
Oh my goodness. Anita Rose Kleinman.
And when did you start going by Anita Mann?
Well, I was picked to be in a film called Bye Bye Birdie, and I was under 18. I was in high school, and I didn't have a work permit. And I went to get a work permit with my mother to the Hollywood work permit office, and she couldn't spell my name. I said, Anita Kleinman, and she said, C-L-I-N. I said, no. Okay, and I started spelling it. And she put her pencil down on the table and she said, sweetheart, you're now Anita Mann. And I said to my mom, that's not my name. And the lady said, you're an AKA, which I didn't know what that was. And my mom said, that's also known as. And my work permit came as Anita Mann. And when they called me on the set and they were calling names, I didn't even answer until I realized it was me. And then I became Anita Mann.
And you just used it from then on?
I did, because it was my work permit, and then I started working as Anita Mann.
That's great. When and where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan. You want the real date? October 21st, 1946.
And did you grow up in Detroit?
No, actually, I started dancing in Detroit, but I grew up, well, I lived there till I was about 6. Then we moved to St. Louis, and I lived in St. Louis till I was almost 10, still dancing there. And then my father got a job in Los Angeles, and I was lucky enough to come to Hollywood when just like 2 months before I turned 10.
What were your parents' names and what did they do for a living?
My mother was Clara Kleinman, and my dad was Jerry Kleinman, and my mom was a secretary and typist and statistical typist, worked at an accounting firm, and brilliant, the world's fastest typist, by the way. And my father was an artist, so it was redundant to say starving artist, but he was an artist and painter and laid floors. He was a carpenter, but like worked as wallpaper painting. Then he got very ill. Then he became a barber, hairdresser, and kind of helped me in life very much because he was ill. So my mom worked 3 jobs a day.
Yeah. What traits do you think you inherited from them?
My mother, for sure, the work ethic of everything has to be done, and you don't phone it in. I mean, we worked really, really hard. And my father was an artist, just a pure artist who every time I learned a tap step, he learned it with me and spray painted my shoes silver. And he was an artist, a beautiful painter, and loved music. So I think I had a good combination of both of them.
Yeah. Did you have siblings?
I have one brother, a year and a half older, and he actually is the reason I started dancing.
How come?
He was 3 and I was almost 2, and he was born very pigeon-toed, and we didn't know my parents didn't know what to do, and there was a dance studio on our corner in Detroit, Queenie's dance studio, and the doctor suggested maybe he go to a dance class because it was right there, and he went, and he wouldn't go without me, and I was 2 probably, he was 3.5, and he kept his hands in his pockets and never moved his feet, and I started tapping and dancing, and I never left a dance studio, and he never went back.
So you started dancing when you were 2?
Oh, probably before that, but in a dance studio at 2, yeah.
Wow. And what styles of dance did you learn back then?
Well, in Detroit, I was really lucky to have a very, very soulful beginning. Like, my godfather was actually the upright bass player in Count Basie's band. We lived in downtown Detroit, and he was in our building, and my mom worked all day, and he gigged at night. They worked at night, so he babysat me. And I'd even go to Count Basie's rehearsal, so I learned very kind of soulful. I was jazz and tap and ballet, but my true love was tap and jazz.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you have other interests growing up besides dance?
Well, it really kind of occupied almost every moment I wasn't in school was dance, but yes, I was an athlete, so every sport that I could play, I wanted to play, and that was really, besides homework and dancing and athletic, kind of endeavors, I was pretty busy. But I loved television. We had radio and television and big band music, and I was a violinist and just kind of loved music. Yeah. So I kind of, I don't know, I had a lot of interests.
Yeah. What TV shows did you like to watch?
Well, we watched the show of Milton Berle, and there weren't that many, there were like a few channels in those days, and you had to get up and turn the TV dial. But we watched every kind of variety show and, everything that was on TV. My dad and I and my mom really worked literally around the clock. But my brother and I liked television and big band music. Glenn Miller was my first real favorite, and Count Basie, obviously, but big band music.
Did you have a favorite style of dance when you were a kid?
Oh, for sure, tap.
Yeah.
Tap. And jazz, we called it modern jazz, but I did ballet because we had to do tap and ballet and jazz. And I had to do ballet, but it wasn't like what I didn't gravitate towards ballet. I could do it for sure, but it wasn't like I couldn't want to wake up every day and go to ballet class. As some of my girlfriends, you were either like purely in love with ballet, but I was real funky and jazz. And in those days it would have been hip hop. Today, I mean, it would have been like what hip hop dancers, but I was tap and jazz.
Yeah. Did you have dancers that you looked up to? Did you have favorites?
Oh my gosh, I never missed a Fred Astaire, Shirley Temple, Gene Kelly, Ginger Rogers. I saw every single movie that had Busby Berkeley. I was just in love with musicals. I guess my dad said from the day I was probably born, I listened to music and I danced around the house and with my dad on his feet, my feet on his shoes. And I think I was literally, as they say, born to dance. I couldn't get enough of it.
That's so great. So did you know you wanted to be a dancer when you grew up? Like, was that just the goal?
Well, okay, that's a tough one. You don't really wake up one day and say you want to be a dancer, but I wanted to earn a living, but I guess my goal was to dance. I didn't know I'd become a professional dancer until it happened for me. And then once I got the taste of being a dancer on stage, it was actually, recitals, but once I really started performing in front of an audience, I was about 12 years old, and Chucko the Birthday Clown at the Moulin Rouge in Hollywood, and I was one of the dancers, and we'd work every afternoon on weekends. Once I started doing that, there was no turning back. That was my life then, from that day forward. But I didn't, as a child, you just go to dance classes, and also we were very, not academic, but homework was very important to me to do my work and to succeed in school. So I wasn't really sure. And I know that there's a big sound going on outside.
Should we wait a second? Probably going to last a few minutes.
Street cleaning? It's street cleaning. Today's Thursday. They'll pass.
Oh, that's good.
Thursday on one side of the street, right where we are. They're going.
Okay.
So did I want to always be a dancer. I never wanted to stop dancing. But once I started dancing on stage, I don't think there was any doubt in my mind that that's what I wanted to become. But I also wanted to be a school teacher. You know, I mean, I loved kids and I loved teaching, but dancing was kind of what I breathed. I couldn't wake up without dancing.
But your first professional job was when you were 12.
Yes, I don't think we got paid. I think we got lunch. I think we got, but yeah, I was about 12 years old, not counting all my recitals, but I was a Chucko the Birthday Clown dancer at the Moulin Rouge, and I would stay. I would ask my dad if I could stay a little longer. He'd always pick me up because I would watch the showgirls with their feathers, and they'd come in at night, and I'd walk past them in the hallway and just thinking, it was the most gorgeous, glamorous kind of existence to become a dancer. I looked at their tights and their high heels, and it was just like that was a dream. And once that dream became reality, it was like that was my life.
So now you mentioned Bye Bye Birdie. Tell us how that came about.
Well, it was an audition in the newspaper. We didn't have agents for dancers in those days. Now they have wonderful agents. But it was an audition in the newspaper that we read and heard about, and from the dance schools, and I went to the audition and I got it, and they had, I don't know, maybe 100 dancers. I don't really, if I looked at the movie again, it would be a big group of dancers in a scene around a big fountain in a courtyard. And I got that job, and that's when my name changed for my work permit. And I went to school on the set, and that was the only number we were allowed to be in, because you had to be 18 and look like you were in high school to do the telephone number, the other parts of the movie. But I became friends with a lot of dancers who were still really close friends with. I was kind of the younger, they were like 18 and I was like 5 years younger. And that was my very first movie, Bye Bye Birdie, and I watched Anne Margaret, and I watched these people, and Dick Van Dyke, and it was just like heaven every day. But I did my homework, and my parents totally supported my dream, and it was my dream, and I was really blessed that they would allow my dream to become my life.
So now, was that the We Love You Conrad number?
Yes!
Yeah.
Oh, you know that number?
Uh-huh.
And are you gonna be sincere? Yeah, faint. I knew my cues. Yeah, but you don't forget your first film. And that was for Anna White. Mm-hmm. And I did around that time start hearing about auditions. And I did audition for the film West Side Story for Jerome Robbins too, for the part of Anybody's a Tomboy, which I later went on playing on the national tour, but I didn't get that part for the film. And I got cut at the very end, but they did hire somebody who was 18 who looked young. But I was really blessed to audition for Jerome Robbins.
Yeah, yeah. So in 1964, you became a dancer for the Tammy Show.
Well, actually, before the Tammy Show,
Yeah.
there was I went to Fairfax High School, which was on the corner of Melrose and Fairfax. And CBS was on the corner of Beverly and Fairfax for the geography lesson. And we lived near the corner of 3rd and Fairfax. So I walked home every day from school with my backpack and my dance clothes and my books. And I was walking past CBS. I was 17 years old, and I saw a line of dancers in the parking lot, as dancers look like dancers, stretching and in dance clothes. And I had my dance clothes in my bag, and I walked into the parking lot, and I said to somebody, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're auditioning for a big TV special." And I said, "Great, can anybody audition?" They said, "Get in line." They were very nice, the dancers. So I actually went to a ladies' room, and I changed my clothes, went back in line. There must have been, I don't know, 500 dancers. It was a gigantic line. There were still people coming in behind me though, so they start calling you in, and I go upstairs to the rehearsal hall in groups, and I didn't know a soul, and it was a gigantic closed-circuit TV special that was going to be shown in theaters for NAACP. Burt Lancaster and Elizabeth Taylor were the host and hostess, and it was just the most amazing dance routine. A man named Lon Fontaine, who was African American, and I kind of danced that style, fit my kind of body really well because it was my training. And I just remember everybody kept cutting people, and I stayed, and at the very end I was in the lineup of people, and Steve Binder was the director who went on to direct the Comeback Special and a lot of other shows, and the Tammy Show, right. But at any rate, he said, so everyone in this room is over 18, right? And I yelled, yes! I was so guilty. I was 17. And now I think I won't go back to jail now, right? Because I lied. So. I said I was 18. And then I got the job. And all the other dancers were hugging each other because it was a gigantic audition. And I was 17, coming home from Fairfax High School with my books in my case sitting over there. But I got it, and that was the beginning. I met the most working dancers, and they were all so nice to me. They knew I wasn't 18, and they had never worked with me before, and they were really kind and told me about other auditions and took me under their wing, and they were so wonderful, and that started me. And I graduated high school early. I decided to accelerate. I had enough credits, and I started working. And I went to one semester at Valley State College because I was still done early.
Right.
But I was a dance major, and I was kind of better than the dance teacher. And there wasn't a dance major. I was taking dance classes. There wasn't a dance major there. But I got a job that you'll ask me about. But the bottom line is that's taking that leap of faith and walking into that parking lot. I think that's what really, at CBS Studios and working on a show like that was my first real kind of, touch with what it was to be a professional dancer.
Yeah, yeah. And did that lead to the Tammy Show?
No, David Winters led to the Tammy Show. That led to West Side Story. That summer, they were doing a version, the national tour for Jerome Robbins' original choreography, and it was opening in Vancouver at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre. And they were having auditions for anybody's. And I think in New York, London, Chicago, they were having auditions, and I auditioned in LA, and I got the part. But because one of the dancers on that show was actually directing the show he was one of Jerome Robbins' dancers. And I'm going to actually see them in a few weeks, all of the dancers from West Side, with George Chakiris and David Winters, and we're having a big kind of honoring George. We're having a reunion, yeah. So I got West Side Story, but I was a David Winters dancer in his dance classes, and then Shindig came first.
Oh, okay.
And then I did about 6 weeks of Shindig, and then David left to go to New York to do Hullabaloo. But in the interim, he did the Tammy Show, and he asked me and Tony Basil and Terry Garr and a bunch of other dancers to be on the Tammy Show, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So all that was happening. 1963 may have been the NAACP. I can't remember the years. Somewhere around there.
Yeah, because Tammy Show was 64.
64.
And so was Shindig. Yeah.
Yes, so it was, those years kind of faded together, but I never stopped dancing, obviously in dance class every day, and in school, and doing homework, and then auditioning and getting the NAACP special, and then moving onward from there. It was kind of like a little bit of a blur from West Side Story, then into the rest of those jobs.
Yeah. I just want to mention that we have a friend in the room with us.
Is my dog here?
Yes, your friend George.
Georgie!
He wanted to be in the shot.
Okay.
Hi, George.
George goes to every one of my dance rehearsals. He sits on the floor and he doesn't budge. Okay, Georgie, you don't have to dance right now, but you could sit down. Good boy. Okay, go
Or
somewhere.
you can stand there. That's
He
okay,
can-
George.
Sorry. he's my, I know, I love you too. Okay.
So, so let's talk a little bit about the Tammy Show. So you mentioned that Terry Garr and Tony Basil were both on the show with you. Talk about working with them and your friendship with them. And
Oh my gosh, Tony and I are still, we yesterday spoke about 2 or 3 times because in about 2 weeks, or a little bit less, she is going to be honored by the Professional Dancer Society. I'm on that board, and George Chakiris and Barry Chase. And so I'm helping like organize some of it and bringing out David Winters and some other people. So Tony and I actually became very close because David took 2 of us to Monaco, to Monte Carlo, to do the Princess Grace special. So it was me and Tony, and we kind of did his shows, and Tony was his assistant, and I would kind of help out as well behind the scenes or with some dancing. But at any rate, the Tammy Show was an incredible experience at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. Steve Binder was the director. It was 3 concerts that they shot in segments, and then he edited it together. And it was also a closed circuit TV special, which in those days, they had a few of them, and it aired in movie theaters. It was, I think, one of the classic rock and roll shows of all time. Yeah. And the funny story was, the last number of the show, I mean, everybody was on it in the 60s.
Everyone.
Everyone, from Marvin Gaye to the Supremes to the Beach Boys, everyone who was kind of the
James Brown.
60s. James,
Incredible James Brown.
that's the story that's incredible. James Brown was supposed to close the show, I think, but they booked the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones came over from London, and they were so gigantic. The Beatles had done Ed Sullivan, I think, and anyway, the Rolling Stones were going to close the show, and I don't think James Brown was thrilled about that decision, but he was performing, and I'm on stage right, I think, with Mick Jagger waiting for the finale, and I'm like standing next to him with Pam, one of my best girlfriends who were still best girlfriends, and he's standing right next to us, and he's watching James Brown, and I can't say the words he said, but and then when James ended, which James did not want to get off the stage. They were dragging him. He was doing that, you know, the cape and just the whole dramatic exit and phenomenal performance. And Mick Jagger said to us, "How the something am I going to follow that?" And Pam and I laughed and we said, "Well, we're on now." And he went out on stage, and if you watch some of the guys in his band looking, it was the first time he was doing all those jumps and doing all of those movements that he was trying. He got so motivated by that performance of James Brown that Mick Jagger actually started it that night. And he later on produced the film. He was one of the producers of the film that Get Out or Get Up. I can't remember the name of the film. Yeah. But he says that James Brown was one of his inspirations for life, and it was that show. It was the Tammy Show that night, watching James Brown. It was an amazing experience.
That's incredible. So again, around the same time, you were also on Shindig.
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. The thing about the dates of working, when I say we worked around the clock, we really worked around the clock because we would shoot TV shows, beach party movies, Elvis movies. It was all like around the clock. So some of my dates may be a little confused for me or overlapping a bit, but Shindig, there wasn't a job like Shindig, ever. Well, Solid Gold to me was the Shindig of the 80s, and Solid Gold of the 80s, Shindig of the 60s. Every star in the world was on Shindig. They'd come in, it was on ABC, 64, 65, and 66. We did it for 3 years, I believe. So I'm pretty clear about those dates. And it was shot live, and if you messed up, you messed up. You didn't know. And I have a funny Terry Garr story about Shindig. But every star was on, and the amazing thing about Shindig, how close we all were, the Righteous Brothers were regulars, like every 3 or 4 weeks they were on, or every 6 weeks, I don't remember exactly. And I still talk to Bill Medley, and he's doing a show with me next month. Still, I call him and I say, it's a charity show for kids, and he said, I want to do it for kids. I mean, we're all still connected from Shindig. And Maria, Gina, Pam, myself, all of the girls, we all still see each other. And it was a real bonding experience in life. And so Terry Garr was on the original 6 shows when we were all on. And for some reason, I wasn't the assistant choreographer, but I could remember all routines. It was like part of me to never want to make a mistake. And when in doubt, we would say pony, when in doubt, pony, just get through it. And one time we're crossing on stage, we're doing a crisscross pony, crisscross, and I could not remember the next step. And I was always helping people, and I said to Terry Garr, right when I passed her, I said, Terry, do you know the next step? And she said, yes, and kept going. So she was funny. She was always funny. And Terry is still we're all still together, Terry and Tony and all of us. It's like having a family for over 50 years. I mean, to have a family like that, and dancers, you don't become a dancer to get rich, okay? You become a dancer because you are a dancer, and there's no choice. You have to dance, whether you're waiting tables, whatever you're doing in life to support your love of dance, you do it. And we were all there for each other. If somebody got ill or needed rent, we always said we were one paycheck from homeless, but we were all there for each other through difficult times and through good times, and that's something that we'll have forever in our life, all of us.
So talk a little bit about the actual dances on the show. What kind of styles were you doing, and were the performers involved in the dances, or were you just dancing behind them?
I could get up and show you a routine right now.
Go for it.
Okay. It was my favorite. It was go-go dancing. So, but we also had to learn routines. I mean, we all had to be together, whether it was the wobble, the pony, the jerk, the zonk, the monkey, the Philly dog, that whatever, we knew every step of those days of what I would say is what the hip hop dances of today. We were very crafted at go-go dancing. And it wasn't easy because when you're a trained dancer and your back is like stiff, you have to let all of that go and just become go-go. So we did routines behind stars. Sometimes we did 1 or 2 little lead-ins without a star in front of us, but we were pretty much the support. And then there are the Wellingtons and the Blossoms, and they were the singers that were always like, camera right were the Blossoms, camera left were the Wellingtons, and they were quite famous on their own. Darlene Love became a really successful performer, and we're all still connected, whoever is still living. We've lost some, sadly, but we were typically 10 girls, and 4 of us were usually in the front, the 4 short ones. I was on camera left, then Pam, then Gina, then Maria. So the 4 of us were the little ones, shorter, And then the other 6 girls were usually on the top of the stair platform, but we were usually 10 across the top, or 4 of us would come down and just work our buns off, you know?
Yeah.
Every week we shot for years.
And who were some of the acts that you danced with?
Oh my gosh. If Ike and Tina Turner, Sonny and Cher, Tom Jones, I don't think there was a star who wasn't on Shindig for 3 years. So we were behind Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, all the Motown groups, all of the English groups, Jerry and the Pacemakers, everybody who came from England came on Shindig because Jack Good was English, who started Shindig. So we had, I can't think of anyone who we didn't dance behind. If we did What's New Pussycat so many times with Tom Jones, Petula Clark. I mean, everyone who was a singer, who had whether it was a one-hit wonder, you know, we danced behind everyone.
But you didn't go to England with the show, you just danced in the U.S.
Right. Well, no, yes, we did not go to England, although we did shoot in Hawaii, which was America, but we didn't feel like it was. We shot a show in Hawaii and had fun there. A vacation, but worked hard, but it was great. But just in Los Angeles.
Excellent. So then a little later, in 1966, you were on a few episodes of the Ozzie and Harriet show.
Oh my goodness, yes, I was. I
So
forgot.
do you remember how that came about?
I do remember, actually. Well, before that, I think I did all the Lucy shows.
Oh, okay, that was before that.
Yes.
Yeah, could we have Lucy
Wait.
a little bit later?
When was Lucy? See, this is where the 60s...
Well, you were on both Lucy shows, right?
Here's Lucy and the Lucy Show.
Yeah, okay. So we have Here's Lucy, which is later. I think the Lucy show might have been earlier.
The Lucy Show was before Here's Lucy.
Yeah.
And I was little Desi's girlfriend on that.
Right.
I do remember now. It actually all started with Elvis Presley because of Jack Baker,
Okay.
who took me with him.
Right. Okay.
So I was dancing on a film. It had to have been before that, called Spin Out. Mm-hmm. Do you have the year?
Yeah, Spin Out was 66 as well. So it's
So
right,
it was
right
all
around the same time.
That's
Yeah.
what I was saying. Like, we did so many
Yeah.
jobs. The Ozzie and Harriet show, I believe, was was it 65 or
We have 66. It's
Well, I
very,
knew-
very early 66, February.
Okay. Well, Chris Nelson was married to Ricky Nelson, and she was a dancer on one of the shows called Chivalry, and we all became friends. Or I maybe even got her to audition for Chivalry, because we were all together at those times. But I knew the choreographer. I had worked with different choreographers, and I was like one of the working dancers, you know, and so we would get called to do a lot of those shows, and I did. I loved working with the Nelsons. I
Yeah,
mean,
talk about them.
well, it was a family of talented people. I loved Ricky, loved him so much, and Chris was married to Ricky, and we were all very close. We'd go over and have dinner. I was dating one of Ricky's friends, I think. So but anyway, we all met, and we would have dinner there. We would, sing songs and play, and it was the 60s. It was a fun time. I was pretty boring because I didn't drink, I didn't do anything, but I had fun. We worked hard. But the Nelson show, the Nelsons, was so popular, and it was so real. They were really nice people. They were really a family. And I don't know what the other TV shows, like Father Knows Best, was not a real family. I was enamored with the Nelsons because they were all, they were brothers, you know, David and Ricky, and the parents. And the whole concept of it was so real. And Dancing with Ozzie Nelson, it was my parents' favorite show. You know, it was like, that was pretty special,
Yeah.
to be with Ricky Nelson. So we had fun
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, you had that great scene where you were on stage with Ozzie.
Do you?
The end of the episode when he
Yes.
comes up on stage with you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, can you relive my life for me? You know, I mean, we have so many shows that were iconic for me that we were part of, you know, whether it was Ricky Nelson, Ozzie Nelson, whether it was the Tammy show with every performer in the world, Shindig, every performer. I also was a dancer on Hullabaloo. And then Elvis Presley. I mean, and Lucy was my mentor in so many ways. And so, I mean, looking back at that time of life was just kind of a miracle and a blessing, and I did not take it for granted. I took it with so much appreciation every day.
Yeah. Now, you had some lines on some of these shows. Were you hoping to do a little acting at that point, or did you really just want to dance?
I hated it. I hated every minute of going to makeup, of getting my hair done, of having to be in front of the camera. I always loved being behind the camera, and I don't know why. My brother and all of his kids, they're photographers. My brother is he was a dentist, but he had a dark room. I mean, I loved creating, and I loved dancing, but I didn't love the concept of having to act I memorized lines, and I did a wonderful commercials. I did a lot of commercials, which did support us and help my family because we all needed to do that. And so I did like doing commercials. And I did get a lot of acting parts, actually, like on Mission Impossible and Love American Style and all those, because I could act. I had a wonderful acting teacher, Leonard Nimoy, who sadly we've lost, but Leonard Nimoy was my acting teacher, and I went to class there, and I studied and I learned from him and how to really understand how to break down a scene and a character and how to make it real. I mean, he was a wonderful acting teacher, but I did not want to be an actress. I wanted to dance and create dance and be a creative part of the industry as opposed to an on-camera. Plus, I wasn't as good at acting. Even though I could get the jobs, I was more special in the dance world, and I knew that that was where I lived. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Elvis Presley.
Talk about
so,
Elvis. Yeah.
you were in several of his movies, and you're in the comeback special. So how did you start working with Elvis?
Well, in the days of those days of film, you were in what was called Screen Extras Guild. There's Screen Actors Guild and Screen Extras Guild, SEG. And every day, and you'd register as a dancer. And every day you'd call in at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And we didn't have cell phones. You'd wait in a line to get to the phone. You know, when you were on a break, you'd run to get your call for the next day. And you just got called to be an extra as a dancer, which was maybe an extra $7 or something. I don't know what it was. And I called in and I got on an Elvis call. And I was always the first person in line. I was always like so proactive to get work. And I got an Elvis job, and a lot of us were on it. So many of our friends. It was a good party scene of dancing. And I was watching, so I'm on stage at, I think it was at MGM, I can't remember, but dancing and watching the cameras moving. And I was watching Elvis do the same walk. He was always doing the same walk on the same words, and they were moving cameras and doing what I learned later to be reverse shots, close-ups, you know, different angles. And he was always doing the same thing. So you're not allowed to be choreographed when you're an extra, because that's an extra bump, it's called. And so you just party, dance, and everybody just dances. Well, I decided to make up my own routine because he was doing exactly, and when he'd get to me on the same word in the rehearsal when they were blocking it, I decided I'd make up a routine, you know, like 4 ponies, 4 jerks, 4 wobbles, 4 Watusis, 4, you know, the same, and I did the same routine each time. And then about the next day, it was a 2-day or a 3-day job, I can't remember, at least 2 days, the choreographer came up to me and said, Mr. Presley would like to talk to you. We'd like to talk to you. And I thought, oh, I'm getting fired because I made up a routine. It cost $10. But they said something to me like, we'd been watching you dance. And Jack Baker was the choreographer, and I didn't know him. And he said his assistant, Marie, was going to be gone and couldn't assist him on the next Elvis film. And would I be interested in assisting? I was like 18 or 19. I said, I honestly don't know what that means, but yes, I would love to. But I really was petrified. Like, Elvis was around, all of his guys were around him. He was actually, I will never forget this, he was speaking to some nuns and gave them a donation while I was waiting to talk to him. And I just thought, this is not real. This is just like a dream from a girl from the Midwest and in Hollywood, you know, because my dad got a job. I mean, it was not part of my thinking. And I said, I'd love to, and I immediately went to the library. We did not have internet, or if we did, I didn't know about it. But I went to the library and I checked out books about camera work and photography and lighting, and well, I read about choreographers. I just tried to learn as much as I could before I started on that. And I had a gift to choreograph. And it was just because I thought maybe I should make that routine up. And they actually said to me the editor was cutting around me, and I didn't even know what, I thought I was cut out of it. I didn't know what that meant, but my arm was always in the same position when he was walking by me, and I was turned the right way, so they said it was matching. It wasn't like a jump cut. It was matching, and I didn't know any of that. And so I got it, but I was a really good go-go dancer. And so when there was a little ad-lib part, I remember it said, never saw parts move like that before. And I was supposed to go as fast as I could and shake. And then he kissed me as part of the film. And I thought, I mean, I was getting paid for this. It was impossible. And then Jack Baker took me under his wing, and I became his assistant. And he was Lucille Ball's choreographer.
So talk a little bit about Jack.
Jack Baker taught me so much. He, old school, you know, old school, great dancer, how to be prepared, how to understand the story of your choreography, not just make up steps, how to work the camera, how to really know that you were what you were doing it for. And that's because he was Lucille Ball's choreographer. Jack was major. He was a performer before, very handsome. He and his wife Sheila were just wonderful people, and he taught me a lot. And he didn't choreograph the next Elvis film. It was the one after, I think, but in between was Alex Romero, and Elvis asked me to assist on that. So I assisted Alex Romero, who was Jack Cole's assistant, and I learned so much from them. They really formed my thinking as a choreographer. I was just an assistant, but they let me choreograph a lot of the go-go steps, because like if I have to do a hip-hop routine now, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hire a hip-hop dancer and I'll frame it, but I give them credit for the hip-hop steps. And I did the go-go steps for them, but they would set the framework and the cameras. And so I learned not just to make up steps, but how to do it for cameras. And that led me to television, which is where I made my life living off maybe 30 years of television shows and TV series. So that's where I made television became my form of choreography, which helped me raise a family and and have work and follow my dream. And I owe so much to those two men and to a few others, Jack Regas, Jack Baker, Alex Romero. I was their assistant on so many shows, Kevin Carlisle in the 60s and early 70s until I got my first job on TV as a choreographer. So Jack Baker took me onto the Lucy show, and I did that for many years.
Excellent. Okay. Talk a little bit about choreography and the camera. And so how does a choreographer work with a director to determine where the camera is placed and how that affects your choreography?
Well, in the days of early television and film, they were called dance directors as well. So when I was taught not to waste a lot of good choreography, so to speak. That wasn't going to be seen. When you don't have control, I later became a director, and that was something later on, but when you're starting to choreograph for cameras, it's a different concept than choreographing like for a stage show, proscenium, and you just make fabulous work because the audience sees all angles of that. But they taught me that the audience only sees what the camera sees. And that's where my work as a choreographer for television, I think, made the director's job easier. Made it easier in the beginning because I would stage it that they could hardly not cut where it should be looking, you know, down the line to a camera close-up of two people spreading out or shooting through a girl's legs, or just creating the camera as the audience. And that's what they taught me. And Lucy was 3-camera. She probably created the sitcom camera world, or Desi may have. I mean, but that she was so early. And she would say to me, and I really learned so much from her, "Why are you doing that over there? Are you going to be on camera?" I mean, she was tough. She was like, right or wrong, you had to be definite. Like you were just, oh, because I'm practicing, because I want to get on, you know, whatever. Right or wrong, you were definite with Lucy. And I mean, she gave Richard Burton line reading. I mean, one of the greatest actors in the world. But she knew where every light was. She knew everything that was going on, and that's how I learned to be aware. I would walk in as a choreographer, I would ask for the camera plot from the director. I would just say, where are the cameras going to be? You know, I just want it to be prepared so that if they said to me, we can't shoot that or this, I just felt it was my job to make the job easier for the director. Yeah. So I learned from really old school, but camera directing, dance directing. And that made my life, and especially if you're doing 5 or 10 routines a week or 3 routines a week, you can't possibly make up the entire song with steps. I mean, you can, but it's every week. You're editing what you shot the week before, you're prepping what you're going to shoot in 2 weeks, you're shooting what you're shooting, and I did a TV series for so many years in a row that, you know, and you want to live. So you definitely have to be prepared for cameras, and that's the world that I came from.
Does it get more complicated when there's a live audience? Do you have to adjust it, or do you still just work for the camera?
Well, I think the live audience loved what we did. I mean, it would always look good for the live audience, but like, I don't mean I do step, touch on the side, just, you know, keep it going. but not have to give them double turn down to, layout. You had to build it for the cameras. And some people would say, oh, your work was just too easy, like it wasn't exciting enough. But you know what? It worked for the public and it worked for the cameras. And I felt it was, you've got that screen, that ratio of a screen. And I felt that it was my job to do it for the cameras, for the home audience. But it always looked good to the, live audience, because that's part of our job as well. Right. But I just thought routines in cameras. That's how I choreographed. I didn't think routines in stage choreography, although I did a ton of stage work, but I'm just saying for my living was television. My major part of my choreography was seen on television, and that's where I wanted it to look the best that it could look.
So circling back
and
to
my
Elvis.
stomach, is it making too much noise? Okay, good. Okay.
Do you want to stop? Do you need a break?
No, I'm fine, as long as they don't hear my stomach growling. Sorry.
That's okay. So let's circle back to Elvis for a second, because I did want to ask about the comeback special and how you got involved with that special.
It was a little painful getting involved with that special, with the comeback special. It was not the most comfortable first day for me, because Steve Binder knew that I worked with Elvis, and Elvis, I was not called to do the special. It was Jaime Rogers and Claude Thompson, and I had not worked for them, and I was not one of their dancers. You did get, choreographers felt comfortable using the dancers who they used a lot, because they're your tool, and they're going to make your work look the best. I had a group of dancers who I loved working with, although I had auditions and always added to that and wanted to meet new people and to be fair. But the 68 comeback special was a gigantic show, and there were 2 choreographers who wanted their work to be perfect. And Steve Binder and or Elvis, or Joe Esposito, who was Elvis's right arm, we sadly lost Joe, but they said that Anita Mann should be on your show. And they said, well, we don't know Anita Mann. They had heard my name, but I had not worked for them. I knew a lot of the other dancers, but nobody likes to be told you have to use somebody. And I was so uncomfortable walking on that stage the first day of rehearsal, because they thought I'm just there because Elvis wanted me there. And how did I know Elvis or Steve Binder? But it was part of, I went with the dinner. It was on the menu, right? That I went in and I went to the rehearsal the first day with Jaime Rogers. I wasn't one of Claude's dancers. They put me with Jaime. And after the first day, it was fine, but I walked into that room pretty embarrassed and nervous that I wasn't going to be right for Jaime, but his work was brilliant, and I loved it, and I've done other shows for Jaime since then, and we're still friends. But I was shoved onto them. I was like, that was it. So we spent a lot of time in rehearsals. They're beautiful numbers. My favorite number was cut from the show. It was Too Sexy. It was a bordello number. And it was fabulous. And Jaime choreographed it. Claude and Jaime had 2 different styles, and Claude was beautiful, lyrical and more modern, and Jaime was so strong and jazz, and I was put with the right person. That was more my forte, not as much the lyrical modern side. So this number was cut because it was like we were dancing around Elvis, which was our favorite part, as like in a bordello. But I have it on film. I do have, nice. It did appear in some of the videos, I believe, in some of the comeback, but it wasn't on the air. But Steve Binder was the director of the time, producer. There were other wonderful directors, but he shot dancing so beautifully, music and dancing, and he really created a form for the comeback special that through his vision. And the choreography was really important in it. And a lot of people just remember Elvis in the like sitting with his guys with the black jacket on, but he required a lot of choreography, Elvis. Yeah. And so on the side, I'd work with Elvis. Like, he was comfortable when I'd say, that just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. Let's try it again. And he had another gentleman, Lance Legault, who was amazing. So he had Lance and me, and it was years of our being comfortable with him, and we were able to say what really worked well. And if we didn't like something on him, we'd say, let's try something else. And he really was amazing in that way, that he would listen and he would try it. And he was just one of the more natural, besides Michael Jackson, one of the more natural movers, dancers who, you couldn't believe he could do everything. Not like Michael, but Elvis had an ability to just feel it from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I think we're going to take a break. Yeah?
How loud was it? My stomach.
It was good.
I hear